welcome back to WWTA News. What we talk about news. Welcome back. We're not going to drop the news immediately. No, we're not going to do that. I want to talk about a phrase, and the phrase is accredited investor. And so I want to talk about this because we're probably going to hear this phrase come up in a lot of different news articles. And, I really wasn't uh, you know, too full of knowledge on that statement. Accredited investor. Well, I know what an investor is. What's accredited really mean? Because in some ways it can be taken one way, like, oh, meaning he's been credited, and then, like, now he's knowledgeable, right? Or like, you get accredited for education, stuff like that. It would dawn across my mind, and so because of that, not having a full understanding, I was like, maybe I should just go ahead and look all that up and then present that. So then, therefore, when conversations arise and there's things to talk about, there will be an understanding that's already been laid, or a foundation. So, we can understand what's being discussed. So, as usual, thank you for stopping by the channel to hear whatever it is I'm going to tell you. I'd like to say, if you have not hit the like button yet, hit it, and if there's any friends, family, or loved ones you think can get any information or gain anything from this, please share it to them as soon as possible. Now, let's jump in here. So, we're going to Investopedia because we want to find out what an accredited investor truly is. So, it says here, an accredited investor is a person or entity that is allowed to invest in securities that are not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, also known as the SEC. So the first thing we noticed here is it's a person or an entity, right? And they're allowed to invest in securities that are not registered. So, okay, I don't really think that's too hard to get. You're not registered with the SEC as a security, and to be an accredited investor who's able to do these things, you have to, you know, uh, you know, be a person or entity. Yeah, right. But that really doesn't help us understand, does it? Woo, let's continue. To be an accredited investor, an individual or entity must meet certain income and net worth guidelines. Okay, well, that's very vague. You know, um, I got to have so much money. Okay. All right, so it says it takes money to make money, and accredited investors have more opportunities to do so than non accredited investors. That's because the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, allows companies and private funds to skip the need to register certain investments as long as the firms sell these to accredited investors. Okay, now we're seeing a little bit of woof. Really, you can do all that? So, companies and private funds, companies and private funds, right? Keep them from the public. So they can register certain investments, right? As long as the firms sell these to accredited investors. Okay. Okay. What, you know what I'm saying? So listen, companies and private funds, okay, they're able to sell these assets to accredited investors. When I see this, it kind of reminds me of what's going on with the SEC and the Ripple case. Like, hmm, like they're trying to say that that's what Ripple's doing. So, okay, to assume that Ripple is a company with private funds and has private funds, and that's what they're doing, right? So it kind of sounds like, okay, I can see how they would want to make that attack. Let's continue. Accredited investors are able to invest money directly into the lucrative world of private equity, private placements, hedge funds, venture capital, and equity crowdfunding, right? So, an accredited investor so far is a person or an entity that has a certain amount of income, right? That's what it looks like so far. And they have the ability to invest their money directly, right? Through private equity, private placements, hedge funds, venture capital, and equity crowdfunding. However, the requirements of who can and who cannot be an accredited investor and can take part in these opportunities are determined by the SEC, right? Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay, all right. There is a common misconception that a process exists for an individual to become an accredited investor. No. No government agency or an independent body reviews an investor's credentials, and no certification exam or piece of paper exists that states a person has become an accredited investor. Instead, the companies that issue unregistered securities determine a potential investor status by conducting diligence prior to sale. So there's no test. There's nothing to say, oh, this person's an accredited investor and this person's not. So the business, the companies, whatever it is, they have to do their due diligence to figure that out. Okay, okay. So who is an accredited investor? Rule 501 of Regulation D of the Securities Act of 1933 provides the definition for an accredited investor. Simply put, the SEC defines an accredited investor through the confines of income and net worth in two ways. It says a natural person with income exceeding 200,000 in each of the two most recent years, or joint income with the spouse exceeding 300,000 for those years, and a reasonable expectation of the same income level in the current year. So a natural person. We're going to get to this in a second because this is interesting. But a natural person whose income exceeds 200,000 in each of the two most recent years, so every year, or a combined income, joint with spouse, 300,000, right? It also says a natural person who has an individual net worth or joint net worth with the person's spouse that exceeds 1 million at the time of the purchase, excluding the value of the primary residence of such person. So at this point, we keep hearing natural person, and then we actually have some monetary value, 200,000 a year, and it looks like $1 million, right? So this is where it gets interesting, and I'm going to ask you all to bear with me while we try to get an understanding of this, because at this point, it takes a natural person to be able to become an accredited investor, right? A natural person can be that. But we really don't know what a natural person is, now do we? It kind of feels like we should probably figure out what a natural person is so we can understand, a little more clearly who has the ability to do this. So we've got a definition, natural person. It says, in jurisprudence, a natural person, physical person in some Commonwealth countries, or natural entity is a person, in legal meaning, one who has its own legal personality. That is an individual human being as opposed to a legal person, which may be a private business entity or non-governmental organization or public government organization. Historically, a human being was not necessarily a natural person in some jurisdictions where slavery existed. Okay? So, again, must we go through this? So, at one point in time, colored Americans were known as 3/5 human. Stupid as that sounds, it is fact. And so that was used for the purpose of voting and counting votes. So, it's just sickening. But we have here clearly, it says a person in the legal meaning, one who has its own legal personality. That is an individual human being, right? So an individual human being, as opposed to a legal person, opposed against a legal person, which may be a private business entity. So a legal person may be a private business entity or a non-government organization or a public government. So those three things are legal persons, right? So we need to figure out what this human being stuff is all about. So, all right, let's go to individual. It says here, an individual is that which exists as a distinct entity. Individuality or selfhood is a state of or quality of being an individual, particularly in the case of human beings, of a being or of being a person unique from other people and possessing one's own need or goals, rights, and responsibilities. So, human being is a person, right? Being a person unique from other people, right? So, you're a being. What type of being? Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so let's get to human. So, human, it says, Homo sapiens are the most abundant and widespread species of primate, characterized by bipedalism and large complex brains. So, humans, abundant and widespread species of primate. Humans, primate, characterized by bipedalism and large complex brains, right? Okay, so that's human. What's this legal person? In law, a legal person is any person or thing. Person or thing. Less ambiguously, any legal entity that can do the things a human person is usually able to do in law, such as enter into contracts, sue and be sued, own property, and so on. So, wait a minute. Let's get that again. In law, a legal person is any person or thing, less ambiguously, any legal entity that can do the things a human person is usually able to do in law. So, a legal person has to be able to do that which a human person, right, can do in law. Okay. So humans can enter into contracts, humans can sue and be sued, humans can own property, and so on. So a legal person has to be able to do all those things the same. All right, so the reason for the term legal person is that some legal persons are not people. So that's why the term legal person exists. Now, what do they mean? So it says um, the reason for the term legal person is that some legal persons are not people. Companies and corporations are persons. Legally speaking, they can legally do most of the things an ordinary person can do, but they are clearly not people in the ordinary sense. So, a legal person or a thing can do the same thing that humans can do. So they can a company or corporation can enter into contracts. A company or corporation can sue and be sued. A company and corporation can own property and so on, right? So it says legally speaking, they can legally do most of the things an ordinary person can do, but they are clearly not people in the ordinary sense. So a legal person is not a human. Okay, so there's clearly a difference there, right? All right, so let's see. In natural person again. In jurisprudence, a natural person, physical person in some Commonwealth countries, or a natural entity is a person in the legal meaning, one who has his own legal personality, that is an individual human being, as opposed to a legal person. So a natural person cannot be a legal person, which we now know is companies, right? Companies and corporations. So when we hear the term natural person, we're talking about human being, right? We're talking about primate characterized by bipedalism and large complex brains. So that's what a human or a natural person is just human. Okay. So who is an accredited investor? Rule 501 of Regulation D of the Securities Act of 1933 provides the definition for an accredited investor. Simply put, the SEC defines an accredited investor through the confines of income and net worth in two ways. So the SEC is saying you have to be a human being, right? And you have to be making $200,000 a year, or combined with a spouse, $300,000 a year, right? All right, so I think that helps us understand what an accredited investor truly is. An accredited investor, based on what we're reading now, means a human being, not a company and not a corporation, because those things are legal persons, not natural persons. So an accredited investor, right, has to be a natural person, human being. Okay, two different things. So you can't be a natural person, right, and be a corporation, a company, a corporation, right? Like that makes no sense because those things aren't living. Okay, you're living as a human being in the sense, right, not as a business or corporation. So that's really something interesting. That's really something interesting to look at and understand. So I just wanted to share accredited investor, because as we go through different articles and we're reading and pulling this information out, it's going to be important that we remember these definitions. There's going to be more definitions that I'm going to bring to the surface, because when we discuss things, we really need to understand what's being discussed. So anyways, there's what I have on an accredited investor. We're basically talking about a natural person. We're basically talking about a human being. We're basically talking about bipedalism, primate, right? We're talking against right, companies and corporations. Those are legal persons, not natural persons. Legal for the sake of legalities, for business contracts, for doing business. That legal business can be a legal person, but not a natural person. So I hope that you all got something out of that, and you understand that businesses and corporations act like people, just like you as a human. You're acting as a person. A business can do it too. They're just a legal person, not natural. So, woo, that got long winded. Forgive me for that, but I just wanted to share that information so you have a better understanding, and you'll be knowing more about the things that we talk about in our future videos. So, I thank you for joining us for that. If you liked it, hit the like button. Don't forget to share with your family, friends, and loved ones. To the next video.